Hello, my name's Tim Lokes, and this is one of the cars which took part in the event codenamed Project Pride. I'm talking to you from the video studio at Canley, where the project all started. For some time, the company has been trying to encourage team working amongst its employees, but this has usually involved relatively small numbers of people. Also, due to the constant change within our organisation over the years, it's been difficult to develop a sense of pride in being a member of the major car producer in the UK. To help the company to continue to progress with the teamwork initiative and to develop a sense of pride with the employees, I felt that what was needed was a very special event, which would involve a large number of employees, irrespective of their grade or job they did, or even at which plant they worked. So, in October of last year, I suggested that the company, or rather a team of employees, should attempt to break some land speed records using the new K-series engine running on unleaded fuel. The last record attempt, by an MG, was in 1957, when the car, driven by Stirling Moss and powered by a 1500cc supercharged engine, broke several international speed records at speeds up to 245 miles an hour at Utah Salt Lakes in the USA, and those records still stand today. It was agreed this year to attempt to break 21 records which were thought to be within our grasp. So, on July the 1st, the team broke those records, all 21 of them. 2 of those records are completely new, being established during the event. Project Pride has been a tremendous success, and now I would like you to meet some of the people who've made it all possible.
Directors of the Rover Group were enthusiastic about the project. John Towers, Director Product Development, gives his initial reaction to Project Pride.
Yes, well, my very first reaction was a sense of being heartened at the very obvious sense of enthusiasm and pride in the company that was going into this proposal. I suppose it was tinged by a little bit of concern, and that concern was that we, the company, should put every possible help and assistance into the team programme to make sure that they had a huge success.
It was agreed that the project would have a budget of £15,600, and for commercial reasons, the attempt had to take place before the end of June 1990. The company would supply facilities plus materials and budget, and the employees would complete the majority of work in their own time. In the event, employees contributed over 6,500 hours of their own time. Brian Cameron was selected as the project manager because of his competition background.
In actual fact, there were 3 things we were doing. We were running a 24-hour event, 24-hour race meeting. We were running a team in that meeting. And above and beyond that, we had to engender this extraordinary esprit de corps, this spreading the word of pride throughout the company, and in fact outside the company. Those, I think, were the feelings that I had. I knew we could do it.
The initial priority was to set the strategy for the project. There were 2 options, either to just beat the records that stood, or to smash the records and set new targets beyond the reach of other manufacturers. As with the 1957 event, the latter was adopted. The group personnel director had this to say.
Project Pride is a wonderful example of how success through people can work. It was an example of a group of people, all sorts of levels, all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of jobs, getting together to do something which they wanted to do and which makes an enormous contribution to the standing of our organisation, our company.
The only suitable UK venue for the event was the Millbrook Proving Ground in Bedfordshire. The event would run for 24 hours, and the date was set for Saturday and Sunday, the 30th of June and the 1st of July. Mike Southall, well known in racing circles and continual winner of the Metro Challenge Trophy, was co-opted for his breadth of experience. The major task at this stage was to brainstorm all the equipment, materials and modification requirements to make the cars durable and competitive. The core team members were each assigned areas of control: vehicle build, parts procurement, financial management, administration, etc. The first major job was the fitting of a substantial safety roll cage, and this was contracted to a specialist firm after the removal of the interior trim. Predicted engine parameter and fuel consumption figures were fed into a computer, and from the results it was calculated that 26-gallon fuel tanks would be required. The next question, where do you put a 26-gallon fuel tank in a metro, and will it affect the handling at high speed with over 200 weights of fuel on board? Safety was a major aspect, always at the forefront of decisions made by the team. The team were given 2 metros which had completed their test life. In the evenings and weekends that followed, people stripped the bodies down to the last clip to enable the dents to be knocked out and the bodies cleaned and painted. Dunlop, who'd supplied all the wheels and tyres, had completed extensive testing, as tyres had given significant problems to other land speed record attempts at Millbrook. Problems, ideas and progress, or lack of it, caused lively debate at the regular Tuesday evening team meetings. These meetings were structured with a general update on the whole project, being followed by separate meetings led by core team members on specific areas of control, such as car build, administration, pit crews, etc. All the specialist teams were responsible for their own organisation and problem solving, and it was also necessary to liaise with other teams to ensure coordination for the whole group. The engine build was behind schedule due to development problems. Tinsmiths, so urgently needed for specific build items, were already working overtime on priority company projects. The problem-solving techniques group were working flat out to avoid unnecessary delays. The team were asked to identify driver selection criteria. The 2 fundamental considerations were driving experience and contribution to the project. The question was asked, should we ask some professional name drivers to participate? This idea was rejected by the team, as it was important that employees should complete the whole project. Meanwhile, both cars were taken to Cowley Body for modifications. The tinsmiths fitted the large competition-type fuel fillers onto each side of the car and installed the large bag tanks and firewalls. During a pit stop, the new fuel system would enable the pit crew to dump 26 gallons of fuel into the tank in 15 seconds. The K-Series engine build and modifications were still causing concern as the time ticked by. Although the capacity of the engine, 1397 cc's, remained the same as production 16-valve engines, by modifying the head, camshafts, exhaust and fuel systems, it was predicted that the engine would produce 135 brake horsepower. To enable the group working on the cars to gain valuable test miles, the first car was fitted with a slave engine. The car was then run on the high-speed track at Gaydon, where shakedown, chassis and body development work was done. Apart from minor modifications to the door frames and rear spoiler to smooth out the airflow together with a flat tray under the rear of the car, the body remained standard. It had been estimated that with a drag coefficient of 0.31, the cars would top 135 miles per hour, with an engine producing 135 brake horsepower, thus having the potential to break all 21 records. Less than a week to go, and everyone attends the last Tuesday team meeting. Last-minute details are thrashed out.
Now we've got all our hired gear, generators, compressors and lights are going down Friday. We're picking them up Friday.
The car's going down Friday as well.
The cars are going Friday. The caravans are arriving Friday in the loos.
A car is brought from testing at Gaydon to enable the pit crews to practice pit stop routines. Meanwhile, in the emissions laboratory, engineers were still struggling to perfect the airflow system. To get a satisfactory result, the engineers had to work through the night to ensure the cars were ready.
One evening at Canley, very late at Canley in fact, when I was leaving through D Gate and I came across a number of members of the Pride team who were impressing upon the chief security officer there that pass-outs or no pass-outs, they had to get those cars to Longbridge that evening, and if they didn't, it was a cataclysmic event. When I actually arrived on the scene, the chief security officer looked like a man who held the whole fate of Rover Group's fortunes in his hands. I hope they sent him a ticket to Millbrook.
Everything has been checked and double-checked, and the cars are loaded onto the transporters for Millbrook. What has fate got in store for Project Pride? Over 80 employees have travelled to the Millbrook Proving Ground in Bedfordshire on Saturday the 30th of June. All the rescue and safety services are in place to ensure the event meets the stringent race meeting regulations. Everyone has a specific job to ensure that for the next 30 hours the event moves with military precision. It's only 9 AM and already the crews are checking over the cars and making last-minute adjustments. 24 hours is a long time in competition terms, and it's been estimated that the cars could travel almost 3,000 miles each in the hours to come. A small village has appeared on the side of the circular track to provide shelter, food and comfort for the drivers, crews and marshals, RAC and timing officials. The weather forecast is not good, with possible rain and strong winds. As preparation for the event continues, a tense anticipation grips the whole team. The Bedfordshire Fire Prevention Officer has insisted a concrete wall is built around the end of the large Gulf tanker, which is providing the unleaded fuel for the event. The team manager addresses the team at a briefing meeting and outlines the procedures for the next 24 hours. For the majority, this is the culmination of 16 weeks of hard work across all Rover plants. Planning, frustrating delays, but above all, teamwork has brought this group together to participate in a very special event. The two teams of 6 drivers, including one lady, have donned their fireproof overalls and gloves and are gathered for their own special briefing. The most important message to the drivers is stay away from the driver in front. Although the cars can overtake using different lanes, the RAC officials will be continually monitoring the 100-metre gap between the two cars. Less than this, and the team will be disqualified for slipstream. As the minutes tick away before the start, there's a quickening of heartbeats among the drivers. Last-minute details are given about the intercom earpieces and radios with instructions for use. Drivers will be in contact with the pit crew managers at all times for help or guidance during the long hours ahead. The cars will come into the pits every 2 hours for fuel, service and driver changes. Back in the pits, the project competition advisor, Mike Southall, casts an expert eye over the refuelling area and ensures that everyone is familiar with the equipment they'll be using. The drivers' meeting draws to a close as the team's electrician explains for the last time the use of fuel pumps and switches. As the team manager wishes the drivers good luck, the first spots of rain begin to fall. Millbrook Proving Ground incorporates a 5-lane high-speed circuit 2 miles in circumference. The 5th lane, which the drivers will be using for most of the time, is built at an angle of 22 degrees, which feels much steeper when you're driving a car. At speeds of around 130 miles per hour, the driver will experience a sideways force of approximately 0.4 G. Practice began at 12 noon, when all other testing at the track had stopped. For many of the drivers, this would be the first opportunity to drive the actual cars, and now it's raining hard. As the practice session ends and the whole team group around the cars for a photograph, the rain has eased to an unsettled drizzle. There must be an awful lot of crossed fingers in that photograph. At last, the final run-up to 1 PM and the start. Brian Cameron waits for the RAC officials to give the signal to send the cars on their way for a grueling 24 hours. As the cars disappear around the circuit, the tension builds as people remember the mechanic's adage, the first few hours are the most critical. Everyone is watching as the cars flash by on their first lap. With engines turning at over 7,500 revs a minute, the noise of the open exhausts under the bridge is deafening. That rhythmic noise was to haunt people during the event. In rest periods, team members, perhaps dozing, would suddenly miss the regular note every few seconds and be instantly awake, nerves straining to catch the crisp exhaust note which would reassure them that the cars were all right. By now, the sun was drying the track, and people were sitting on the bank and calculating when the first pit stop would be and which car would come in first. The two cars had specific tasks and were fitted with different gear ratios. Car number 1 with a high ratio gearing would set a pace to break the long distance records, and car number 2 would go flat out from the start to set new records for flying, start and short distance. As the pit manager stood on the track, pit crews waited expectantly for the first car to arrive. This was what they'd practiced so hard for. As the car stopped in the pit lane, the crew swarmed around it as each man completed his task, determined not to let the team down. The Dunlop engineers checked the temperature of each tyre and measured wear patterns. The tyre experts had predicted minimal wear except on the offside front tyre. Bonnet on, hands in the air, and the car is sent on its way with a new driver and a full tank of fuel. Within 3 hours, 12 records had tumbled to the 135 mph metro. The control caravan was used to monitor lap times of different cars and drivers to build up a bank of information. Drivers use this information as a guide to achieve the quickest route around the circuit. The information was also used by the team to check the results independently from the RAC timekeepers and advise drivers on the track when they had broken another record. By early afternoon, it was becoming obvious that the higher geared car was not performing as well as expected. The high gearing was not allowing the engine to run on the cam, which was causing the problem. Lengthy discussions took place, and it was reluctantly decided to call the car in and change the gearbox. If this work was completed at this stage, the car would then be able to attempt to break the 12-hour record and all the other records within that time. Although still dry, the clouds were gathering above the village, and the wind was by now gusting up to 15 miles per hour. The remaining car was lapping the 2 miles consistently in 58.5 seconds, and the fire team were getting ready for another pit stop. By now, both the pit crews had reduced their tasks to a fine art, and the pit managers made sure everyone was in their place at the right time, including the drivers. This driver is obviously performing a little-known ritual war dance before his next lapping session. Such was the enthusiasm for the job. As the Pride 2 car glides into the pits with its engine cut, the crew spring into action like a well-oiled machine. Nothing is left to chance. The pit crew stand hands in air to signify that jobs are finished as the car accelerates cleanly away and out of sight for another 2 hours at a grueling pace. Everyone scrambles back up the bank. The driver who has just completed the 2-hour ride is debriefed. One driver had this to say.
Very exhilarating. Lots of high frequency, sharp bumps coming through both through the floor, through the steering column. The steering wheel getting kicked quite considerably by all the bumps on the track. As you pass the bridge, the wind gets behind you, takes you up to an indicated 140 on the speedo. That it feels fast. As you round the lower part of the circle, the wind hits you and you feel as if you stop.
And so the hours and the records are relentlessly falling to the team, and by 7 p.m, 16 records have been smashed. The 6-hour record by an amazing 131 miles. The wind is now so strong, drivers are reporting a 9 mph difference on certain sections of the circuit. It's now 9:15 in the evening. Pride Car 1 is now back on the track with the new gearbox fitted and is lapping quickly and consistently. On the next lap, another record is due to be broken. All available bodies assemble on top of the bank above the pit lane. As the car rushes past, the driver is given a big wave as the 1,000 miles record falls to the Project Pride team. Lights are coming on in the countryside as the car roars past to break the timing beam yet again. But unfortunately, storm clouds gather as night draws in. At 1 hour to midnight, the car makes its scheduled stop. Lights have been rigged on top of the bank to enable crews to work efficiently in the semi-darkness, and the pit manager has thoughtfully put a lamp on his hat. The pit stop is finished briskly, and the car goes on its way into the gathering darkness. The worst time for the drivers is at dusk and in the early morning at first light. As the hours pass and the engines are loosening up, the cars are lapping faster at 1 mile every 29 seconds. The time is 1 a.m. It's pitch black with torrential rain. With wet waterproofs flashing in the glare from the lamps, the pit crew complete their tasks with gusto, despite the rain and cold. The other car streams past at 130 miles per hour in a cloud of spray to complete another lap. The RAC steward expressed concern at the weather conditions, but after consultation with the team manager, he's persuaded to let the event continue. One of the drivers gave this account of conditions on that night.
Drove the car in the early hours of the morning, and the car handles superbly, even in the torrential rain. Was driving the car up to speeds of 130 miles an hour, and on a couple of occasions I actually had to lift off over a quarter-mile period because I just couldn't see a thing. I couldn't see the white line, the yellow line, or the barrier on the track.
4:30 a.m. at Millbrook on a cold, wet morning. It's the 1st of July. Nobody is singing in the rain this morning, but both cars are on song, lapping consistently. Another 3 records fell during the night. Bleary-eyed crews wrapped up against the cold check for the next pit stop time. The RAC timekeepers, warm and dry in their hut, keep a skillful watch as the cars go by, oblivious to the curious eyes which peer through the windows from time to time. It's time for yet another pit stop. Still wet, but at least the rain has stopped. The pit crew machine rolls on, and within 53 seconds we have hands in the air and the car is on its way once again. The refueling crew commence their chore of pumping fuel to fill the container on the tower, watched by the ever-vigilant fire crew from Cowley. Oh no, the team manager didn't order enough fuel. What's that? They're just joking. 9 a.m. By now, sleeping bags have been put to one side and activities are sorted out for the morning. There's a quiet expectancy growing amongst the team that with the torrential rain behind them, then perhaps, but with 6 hours still to go, it's not over yet. For some, the long hours are beginning to show, and not without good reason. The pit stop ritual has now become a rhythm which the crews respond to easily. As the minutes tick by, the weather is improving, and eventually the sun breaks through the cloud. Both pit managers have been in constant touch with the drivers throughout the night, helping to keep them alert and to concentrate in the difficult conditions. And now, as the last few hours pass by, the drivers will be guided to the pits for their last stop. Drivers and crews talk in groups. Suppressed excitement is mounting as the Pride 1 car arrives for its last pit stop. The crews wait with the quiet confidence of a job well done. The timing officials warn us that the 24 hours deadline is getting near. The team manager unfurls the checkered flag and stands in position on the track to welcome home the 2 cars. It's the last lap, and suddenly it's all over. We've done it. Success. The team has broken 21 land speed records, and the record-breaking car has travelled just over 2,911 miles. What a fantastic achievement, not only for all the employees who contributed to the project, but for the Rover Group as a whole. Project Pride has certainly lived up to its name. As the cars complete their victory lap, they pass the pit area for the last time, horns blowing and lights flashing, to the delighted applause from the rest of the team. Euphoria takes over as the whole team gathers around the cars for a champagne celebration. It's amazing what teamwork can achieve. And remember, 500 people got it right first time.